Police officers of Reddit, what is your best "I think we have the wrong person" story? I remember when my son was 3 weeks old. It's 3 a.m. and I am laying down on the couch, baby is in his rocker. Suddenly there is loud knocking on my door followed by police. I thought for sure it was my friends coming back from the bar and they needed a place to crash, and they have done that. Police knocked to me before. So I am sitting there mad thinking, don't they know I just had a kid? Needless to say I didn't answer the door, figured they could find somewhere else to crash. Next thing I know my door is kicked down, I grab baby and run towards the door and 4 or 5 police officers run in. They search my house with flashlights, scared the crap out of my sleeping husband. My 5-year-old didn't wake up though, lol. Turns out they had the wrong address. They apologized and a week later they installed a new door for me. But holy fuck, that was scary. I'm impressed they replaced the door. My mom had this happen to her. The police broke the front door, ransacked the house, and ripped out the toilet. They were looking for a druggie who didn't live there anymore. Once they were finally satisfied that he wasn't there, they left. Never fixed a thing. Ripped out the toilet. Did they think he was hiding under the shitter? Probably looking for flushed drugs. Pulling a toilet isn't going to magically reveal drugs though. That shit is well and gone once it hits the pipes. Just like actual shit. Well, it could get stuck in the pipes if in large bags or something. But maybe they just had a poop fetish. Yeah, but then it'd overflow. Those cops sound kind of stupid. They have consequence-free rampage privileges. I bet that cop just wanted to see if he could rip out a toilet. The pic probably on his Facebook page. Edit, feeling cute, might rip out your grandma's toilet later. I was a curious little kid. My father stopped at the local liquor store to grab a bottle of wine and I was poking around. The door to the office was unlocked and I wandered inside, sat in the chair and spun around a few times, got bored, wandered out. A few days later my father gets a call from the police, and we go in. As the officer is speaking to us I proceed to spun around in the chair and pick up and look at everything on his desk. After about a minute the officer says, "Thank you for coming in. I see what happened. You can go." Turned out the owner's teenage son stole a few grand from the store and tried to blame it on the handsy 5-year-old. A few grand? How does someone even do that? I was scared to ask my parents for $20 to go to the movies. My nephew, 15 or 16 at the time, stole $1,500 from his grandparents but tried to play it off like it was no big deal because he found over $5,000 and didn't take all of it. Dude, you just killed 3 people. Yeah, but there were 10 people there and I didn't kill all of them. 2 of my colleagues, murder squad detectives, attended custody to meet a defendant answering bail. When they arrived at the custody desk there were a couple of people hanging around, waiting for their solicitors. They told the custody sergeant they were there for insert name and he pointed one of the guys out. They went up and introduced themselves and said they would be questioning him at another station, so all 3 got in the car and headed off. Whilst driving, they told the defendant what would be happening. On arrival he would be arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, questioned and either bailed or remanded. The guy was like, "You've got to be joking, attempt murder?" I was shoplifting. He was relatively calm, half laughing and shaking his head. A short time later one of the officer got a call from the custody SGT, their actual bail appointment had arrived. There were 2 defendants with the same name answering bail that day. They apologized to the non-murderous shoplifter, turned the car around and headed back to bring the right person in for questioning. Keystone Cops to the max. In our family we had a great uncle who tattooed his name and social security number to his shoulder. Apparently he had the same name and birthday as another guy with a prison record, and had kept hearing about it. It came in handy at least twice when he was pulled over and the cops started arresting him. Each time he got out because he had his social security as proof that he was innocent. I've got 2, from 25 years ago when I was a cop, one on one side of the badge and one from the other. The first, I got assigned a warrant service to pick up a wanted felon. Mr. Robertson was 6 feet tall, 250 pounds, long red hair, bushy red beard, and lived at, let's say, 123 Elm Street. Pretty distinctive dude. So I roll up to 123 Elm Street, and sure enough, they're mowing his lawn in the front yard as the man himself, 6 feet, 250, red hair, red beard. I make contact with him. "Hey, Mr. Robertson? You got warrants and it's time to go to jail. Hook him up, take him to jail, and in central booking I get his property off him, and while filling out the inventory happened to notice this guy as Mr. Robinson, not Robertson. Sure enough, the wanted guy was my guy's landlord, and his twin brother from another mother doppelganger. When I'd said Robertson, Robinson didn't even twig to the fact I hadn't said his name, he just heard the similar sounding name as his own. We had to walk the whole thing back and reactivate the warrant, then kicked him loose with a handshake and an apology. The one from the other side, I had just gotten off duty at 2 a.m. and was driving home still in uniform. There wasn't any other traffic on the road, so I wasn't really surprised when a police car turned in behind me and started following me. I figured he was trolling for drunks and I was the only thing moving on the road, so he was just going to follow me a little to observe my driving, and he'd realize pretty quick I was sober and peel off. Instead, another patrol car joined him. And another. And another. Then all four lit me up, and spread out behind me, blocking the road in a full felony stop. Well, this just got interesting. They went through the whole procedure, and I carefully followed their instructions. When they finally got me out and saw my uniform, they just stopped for a few seconds while I was trying to figure out just what the hell was going on. Then 3 of the officers got in their cars, turned off their lights, and took off, while the original officer told me I could put my hands down and explained what was going on. My car was a spot-on match for the suspect vehicle in an armed robbery and shooting that had just occurred right up the road. I'd driven right by the scene before the cops even got there, a few minutes before the officer in the next district spotted me and thought I was the suspect. It was an interesting night. Not a police officer, but one night around 8 p.m. my fiancé received a call. "Officer, Derek, we have your health card. Tell us your whereabouts right now." "Fiancé, this isn't Derek." "Oh, you sound like Derek. Your buddies ratted you out and gave us your number. Now where are you?" I'm not Derek and I'm not telling you where I am." "Who are you?" "Oh, this is Officer Smith. Stop messing around and tell us your location, Derek." Again, Derek is not my name. How do I know you're a real officer?" "Oh, boy, if you don't tell me where you are, you're going to be in much more trouble. My badge number is blank." Okay fine, I'm at home at blank. If you don't show up in a police car, I'm not coming out." He hung up the phone, dialed 911 cause we live in a bad area and wasn't sure if this was a fake call or not. Operator verifies that it was a correct badge number. The officer called back. He apparently misdialed by one number. He apologized, but still blamed my fiancé because you were being very defensive and sounded guilty. You know, guilty until proven innocent. Since everyone else isn't a cop. I was 16 and worked at a golf course mowing lawns and such. We got a call at home from the cops that said I'm a suspect in a hit-and-run accident because my plate #S were on the car that drove away without stopping. The cops said the car was maroon-colored, my car was gray. We told them and figured that was that. The next day at work there was a minor accident. A dumbass coworker pulled a metal rake too hard and the rack holding it came down onto my forehead. It wasn't a deep wound, but it bled a lot. My boss took me to the ER to get my head super glued, and to be safe, took me home too. Thus my car stayed at the golf course. That evening a cop comes by and finds me with a head wound and my car is missing. I look quite guilty. By sheer luck, the cop calls someone after talking to my parents and discovers they got the guy and the plate numbers were close. I probably would have been arrested. Someone had stolen a car and I went to go check it out. I'm driving behind what I think is the car. It had the same color vehicle and same car, and the mistake I made was not matching the license plates. I pulled them over, got out the car and realized it was my friend with his family. I reread the license plate and I noticed they were the same except for the last letter on the plate. The last letter on the stolen car was J. The last letter on my friend's was I. I laughed it off and apologized and we went out to dinner later that night. Was hoping your friend's nice family was secretly a family of car thieves. This guy definitely went through some shit being the wrong person. Photo of the two men. A Missouri man spent nearly 17 years behind bars for robbery until his doppelganger was discovered, and the other guy looked so much like him that authorities decided to toss out his conviction. Jones, 41, had been serving a 19-year jail sentence for a 1999 robbery when he heard other inmates buzzing that another prisoner looked just like him, and even shared his first name, Starr said. It's unclear what the other man was locked up for, and Jones never saw his doppelganger. But he told 2 legal interns assigned to his case about the rumors, according to Alice Craig, one of Jones' lawyers. The interns brought the message back to their superiors at the Midwest Innocence Project and the Paul E. Wilson Defender Project, who dug further into the case. It turned out that not only did the other man bear an uncanny resemblance to Jones, he also lived closer to the site of the crime. Jones' doppelganger, Ricky Amos, used to live with his mother in Kansas City, Kansas, near the address of the incident, Craig said. Jones lived across the state line in Kansas City, Missouri. When I saw that picture, it made sense to me, said Jones, who has denied committing the robbery, to the Star. Either you're going to think we're the same person, or you're going to be like, man, these guys, they look so much alike. His lawyers showed the 2 men's photos to the victim, 2 witnesses and the prosecutor in Jones' case, and all 4 admitted they could not tell the pair apart, according to the Star. The most frustrating thing about the whole thing is that there was a GoFundMe page set up to help Jones in his freedom. I mean, for fuck's sake, just give the guy some money. Interestingly, this is one of the reason why we have fingerprinting. It is all because of 2 guys, Will West and William West, who not only had the same name but also looked alike. They were both sentenced to jail at Leavenworth Penitentiary in Kansas over 100 years ago. The arrival of Will West in 1903 caused the records clerk at the prison considerable confusion, because he was convinced he'd processed him 2 years previously. Full story here. Not a police officer, but I was the wrong guy once. I was dating this girl, and when things didn't work out, she got vindictive. She had a copy of my car insurance and got a guy friend to pose as me to call the police and report my vehicle stolen. I go be bopping out of work one glorious Friday afternoon and get felony stopped by about 10 Dallas TXPD officers. Guns drawn on me and everything, right outside of the large office complex I worked at. Turns out the people who reported my car stolen used their own phone number when filing the report and eventually got caught and charged. Turns out the people who reported my car stolen used their own phone number when filing the report and eventually got caught and charged. Unbelievable. There had been a string of robberies, 7 in 2 weeks, in my neighborhood, so everyone was on high alert. I was home by myself, and one of my dogs started puking, so I rushed to let him outside, forgetting my dad had set the alarm. We had a silent alarm, so I had no clue it had been tripped, sending out a dispatch request to the local 520. 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. I'm young, home alone by myself, and had been told to never answer the door if I was alone. So I didn't. They kept knocking. Long story short, they broke the door down. They thought they had caught the burglars. Multiple cars. I vaguely remember there being a K9 unit involved, and the police had their suspect, a 9-year-old girl, crying her eyes out. I was not the group of thieves, who ended up being caught about a week later. I'd like to imagine them putting you in cuffs, high-fiving each other and telling you you'd be going to jail for a long time for your crimes. I remember them being just as confused as I was. But, I did get to be put into custody, as it was looked down upon to leave a young child, under 12, by themselves, so they had to talk to my dad before they left. He had gone to work, and I was waiting for my mom to get home. So they both came home to cops in their house. Lol. Not an officer, but I live in a neighborhood in Indy that is going through a major revitalization right now. So it's very much in a transitional phase. We rent a house from a good friend of ours. He bought the house from some garbage people who had lived there for a long time. These people sold, made drugs, there was violence, prostitution, everything. In general, the house was disgusting, unlivable, really. Just the worst. Well, the scumbags who lived here still try to use our address even after 5 years. About a year and a half ago, one of the dudes used our address to renew his driver's license at the BMV. He even had the audacity to leave a note for us to call him when the license came in. Fast forward a few months, around Christmas time, we are all sitting around, watching TV when we get a knock on the door. My husband answers it and it's a SWAT team with guns drawn. They see my husband, who does not look like a methed-out crackhead, and inside are our 2 little boys, my parents, and me nursing our baby plus the Christmas tree and all the lovely trappings of our home. They immediately put their guns down and my husband and I have a lovely chat with them. Yeah, they had our house surrounded, guns drawn, the whole shebang, looking for this dude who was wanted on some kind of violent felony. We were pissed at this dude who I refer to as Big Nasty. Obligatory, not a cop, but one day I was on the way home, and I noticed the police helicopter flying overhead. I lived in a big city at the time, so I thought nothing of it until I was blocked in by 2 police officers. Someone in an SUV very similar to mine had been trying to lure children at a school nearby, and was considered a dangerous offender due to previous convictions. They thought they had their guy, but all they had that day was a very pregnant and bewildered white girl in an SUV with her ice cream. The one officer came to my window with his hand on his gun and asked me if I knew anything about someone luring children in my Jeep that day, and I looked at him in bewilderment. I have a panic disorder, hopefully that explains my reaction, and blurted I have 2 under 5 and 1 right here, what the fuck do I want someone else's for? Luckily they let me go after telling me what to keep an eye out for. I can laugh about it now. I have 2 under 5 and 1 right here. Yikes, glad they waited for you to finish that sentence. Not a PO but worked in family business. We once brought the wrong corpse to the funeral. The widow was really angry. Aw man, that's a grave error. Edit, my first gold, thank you kind stranger. I live in a small town in rural England, and we used to get some trainees, new police officers from the Met there for their training. Me and some of my friends were teenagers. We were walking to the supermarket, because what else is there to do in a small town pre-internet? Suddenly from out of nowhere this police car comes screaming out of nowhere, sirens going, and screeches to a halt in front of us. A young guy, must have only been about 5 years or so older than us, jumps out and starts giving us the whole hairdryer treatment. He lines us up and starts taking our statements of what we had been up to in the last hour, gloating at us. You lads are in trouble now, criminal damage, trespass, theft. You have really screwed up. With him was the local Bobby, and he came up to each of us in turn after the younger guy had grilled us and said very jovially, "Now don't worry lads, I'm sure it's a misunderstanding, we've had some reports of a break-in. You don't match the preliminary description, and I'm sure we'll get this cleared up when we get the more detailed description come through." So the more detailed description comes through the radio, and the young guy is wearing the biggest shit-eating grin you've ever seen. The description didn't even remotely match, and honestly the young guy looked so disappointed we all ended up feeling sorry for him. So yeah, that was probably quite embarrassing for him. Edit, typing no good. Once again, not a police officer. I was on the receiving end. I'd been at a small bar listening to some live music with a friend. We leave a couple hours later, and less than a mile from the bar I get pulled over. No big deal. I pull into a circular driveway and then I get scared. No fewer than 4 police cars surrounded us. 2 behind and 2 in front. They come to both sides and leave a number of officers at our windows while they run our licenses. See, earlier, in between sets, a lady got on stage and warned any women there not to walk home or accept rides from strangers. Apparently, there had been a number of abductions and rapes in the area. My friend and I ignored it. We were not alone and we were not women. Finally, the cops give us our identification back and tell us we matched the description of the rapists. Didn't say how they determined it wasn't us, but apologized and sent us on our way. It wasn't until the next day we realized just how bad that could have been. Well, like many other posts, I'm not a PO, but I did get felony stopped while on Las Vegas Boulevard. I left work, pulled out of the parking garage and turned right on Tropicana. I then see lights behind me and start to pull over thinking it was an emergency vehicle. I am then surrounded by police with guns drawn. This was like midnight on the strip, so it was intense. Police make get out walk backwards with my hands on my head. They cuff me and tear into my car almost immediately. Long story short, it was another Mustang with out-of-state tags involved in a robbery. That was an intense evening. Thanks for watching our video. If you like it, please smash the subscribe and like button to support the channel, so that we can create more quality content in the future.